It may be the most controversial part of the entire Constitution, the clause that counts slaves as 3/5 of a person. Some point to this as proof that the Constitution itself is racist. But is that a fair representation? What exactly was the 3/5 compromise? What does it say? And why was it included in our founding document? Let's break it down. For cases like this, the best thing to do is to go straight to the source. So let's take a look at the US Constitution, specifically in Article 1, Section 2. White people shall be considered fully human, whereas black people shall be considered only 3/5 of a person.
Liar! Liar!
Okay, fine. That's not really what it says. But with the way modern culture reads this clause, you could be forgiven for thinking so.
Generally, when a white person says, I have a compromise, and starts doing electoral fractions that count black people less, those haven't been great moments for democracy.
So then what's the truth? Let's get some context by going to the source. For real this time, I promise. In Article 1, Section 2, the Constitution instructs the government to record the number of citizens in each state. Quote, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. So what exactly is this saying? Well, the government needed a census to determine the number of representatives each state would get in the House of Representatives. Free citizens, which includes those bound to service for a term of years, meaning indentured servants paying off their debts, were counted in full. Indians not taxed, aka not taking part in the American system, weren't counted at all. Anyone else, which on a large scale effectively meant slaves, were counted as 3/5. To be clear, this was based on status, not color. Free blacks could and did count in full, just like their white peers. So why was this the plan? And a curveball, why was it the slaveholders who wanted the slaves to count as more? This is why context is so important. When creating the structure for our legislative system, the framers of the Constitution didn't see eye to eye. They agreed that states should get representation in the House of Representatives based on how many people lived in a state. But they disagreed on who should count towards that number. Those from slaveholding states said, by all means, count the slaves, count the horses, count the Oompa Loompas if we can. I don't know, maybe they already counted as slaves.
In the greatest of secrecy, I transported the entire population of Oompa Loompas to my factory here.
Hey, Daddy, I want an Oompa Loompa.
The point is, the higher the census numbers, the more power a state has. But delegates from the non-slave states knew that this would give slaveholding states greater control over the direction of America. What critics of this clause get wrong is that counting slaves as full citizens for the census would do nothing to empower the slaves, but instead empower the very people who held them in chains. For the slaves, it would be better to not be counted at all. But the slaveholders would not accept that, nor would the non-slave states accept giving the slaveholders excessive representation. So that's why it's called the 3/5 compromise, because it wasn't an ideal outcome, meaning not counting slaves towards their captors' representation, or better yet, banning the practice altogether. But it was better than counting slaves in full. Look, the point isn't to say that black people have been treated perfectly throughout American history. Obviously, that's not true, but that's not because of the Constitution. And the 3/5 compromise is not something we need to be ashamed of. Many of its critics really just want to discredit the Constitution as a whole, so they can replace its tenets with their own agenda.
Let the past die. Kill it, if you have to.
But these criticisms are, shall we say, disinformation. As Ted Cruz said, now take the Constitution according to its plain reading, and I defy the presentation of a single pro-slavery clause in it. On the other hand, it will be found to contain principles and purposes entirely hostile to the existence of slavery. Actually, I lied again. That was Frederick Douglass.